In 476 CE, the last Western Roman emperor surrendered his crown to a Germanic chieftain. The empire of Caesar and Augustus finished. But 500 miles east, Roman emperors would continue ruling for another 1,000 years. Same traditions, same enemies. One half died, the other refused to fall. The answer starts with a map. Constantinople sits at the exact point where Europe meets Asia, where the Black Sea meets the Mediterranean, the Bosporus Strait, a narrow waterway separating two continents. Whoever controls this choke point controls trade flowing in every direction, grain from the Black Sea, silk from Asia, gold from everywhere. Emperor Constantine didn't choose this location by accident. He chose the most strategically valuable real estate on Earth. Geography alone doesn't save cities. Walls do. In 413 CE, Emperor Theodosius II built the most sophisticated fortification system the ancient world had ever seen. 12 miles of triple walls protecting the only land approach. First, attackers faced a 60-foot moat, then an outer wall, then a killing ground, then a middle wall, then another killing ground. Finally, the inner wall, 40 feet of solid stone with towers every 60 yards. Direct assault was suicide. These walls would hold for over 1,000 years. The city could also be supplied entirely by sea. Besieging armies could surround Constantinople on land, but ships kept arriving with grain, weapons, and reinforcements. Starvation, the weapon that brought down countless ancient cities, simply didn't work here. The combination proved devastating for attackers. Goths tried, Huns tried, Avars tried, Persians tried. For a millennium, they all failed. The walls weren't just defensive architecture, they were a statement. The city will not fall to force. Enemies learn to negotiate, bribe, or go around. But breach these walls, that took until 1453. Walls alone don't save empires. The East had something the West had lost, functioning institutions. Compare the two halves. The West, declining cities, collapsing trade, unpaid soldiers who stopped fighting, tax collectors who stopped collecting. The East, thriving urban centers, bustling commerce, a professional army that received regular pay, and bureaucrats who kept the machinery running. When soldiers aren't paid, they become bandits or join the enemy. When tax systems collapse, governments can't fund armies. The West entered a death spiral. Less revenue meant fewer soldiers, meant less territory, meant less revenue. The East maintained the cycle that kept empires alive. Taxes fund armies, armies protect territory, territory generates taxes. The Eastern bureaucracy deserves special attention. Even mediocre emperors, and there were many, couldn't destroy the empire because competent administrators kept governing, tax assessors still assessed, judges still judged, governors still governed. The system didn't depend on genius at the top. It depended on thousands of trained officials following established procedures. The West concentrated power in military strongmen who rose and fell with alarming frequency. The East distributed power through institutions that outlasted any individual. Resilience came from redundancy, not from hoping the next emperor would be competent. If the East had all these advantages, survival should have been guaranteed. It wasn't. The Eastern Empire faced every threat the West faced, plus one more. The Sassanid Persian Empire pressed from the East, a sophisticated rival with its own imperial ambitions. Meanwhile, waves of Avars, Slavs, and Bulgars pushed along the Danube frontier from the north. The West only had to defend one direction and failed. The East defended two directions simultaneously and survived. This required resources, coordination, and strategic flexibility the Western Empire couldn't match. Constantinople's advantages weren't luxuries. They were necessities for managing multiple existential threats. In 527 CE, Emperor Justinian inherited a stable empire and decided to restore Roman glory. His generals reconquered North Africa from the Vandals. They retook Italy from the Ostrogoths. They seized southern Spain. For the first time in a century, the Mediterranean was a Roman lake again. The maps looked magnificent. Justinian had reversed the fall of Rome itself, a triumph, except it wasn't. Those conquests stretched the frontier to impossible lengths. Defending Italy required armies that couldn't defend the Danube. Garrisoning North Africa drained treasuries needed for Persian wars. Then plague struck, killing perhaps a quarter of the empire's population. Justinian's greatest achievement became his successor's greatest burden. The reconquest teaches a hard lesson. Success can create vulnerability. Justinian looked like the greatest emperor since Augustus. He built Hagia Sophia. He codified Roman law. He restored the empire's territorial glory. But overreach has consequences. The resources spent reconquering the West couldn't defend against the Arab invasions that came a century later. Sometimes the most impressive achievements plant seeds of future crises. The Eastern Empire survived another 900 years after Justinian, but never again controlled the Mediterranean. The sustainable empire proved smaller than the glorious one. One detail matters for understanding this history. These people called themselves Romans, not Byzantines. That's a term modern historians invented. Citizens of Constantinople in 1000 CE would have been confused if you called them Byzantine. They were Romans. They used Roman law. They claimed descent from Augustus. They saw themselves as the direct continuation of the empire, not some Eastern offshoot. Right? This wasn't delusion. Their institutions, their legal codes, their administrative systems maintained genuine continuity with the classical empire. Identity matched reality. The Roman Empire didn't fall in 476. It relocated. The Theodosian Walls still stand in Istanbul today. Walk through the Topkapi district and you'll find them weathered, crumbling in places, but standing. 1600 years of earthquakes, sieges, and urban development, and the walls remain. Byzantine engineering outlasted the Byzantine Empire. These aren't ruins in some remote archaeological site. They're part of a living city, surrounded by apartments and highways. Physical proof that what Constantinople built was meant to endure. The empire fell in 1453. The walls that protected it for a millennium still haven't. Constantinople's survival reveals what makes civilizations resilient. Defensible geography buys time. Functioning institutions, tax systems, paid armies, competent bureaucracies matter more than any single leader. An overreach, however glorious, creates vulnerability. The Eastern Empire faced Arab invasions, Crusader betrayal, and eventual Ottoman conquest. But it survived 1,000 years after Rome fell. Not through luck, through walls, money, and institutions that worked.